Hello, my dear church boys, and welcome back to St. Robert's Daygame podcast. And in this podcast episode, I am talking to Robbie Kramer and his assistant coach, Nick. And we talked about Daygame in Istanbul, Turkey. I was thinking about going to Turkey with a few students, and I really wanted to understand how good is Turkey for Daygame. Is it good enough to take students there? Because I didn't really want to fail my students by taking to a location that isn't great for Daygame. And we talked about their stories, their experiences, the experiences of their students, the best places in Istanbul, Turkey for Daygame, the best places for staying at, which districts have the best parties, etc. Before we get into the topic, as always, a few updates about where I am, what's going on, coaching spots, etc. I'm still in Sweden, Stockholm, coaching a student there until tomorrow. Then I'm heading to Riga, and I'm coaching for most of August in Riga, a few guys from New Zealand, and then going on a vacation for a week to just kind of rest my brain from Daygame for a week. And then in September I will most likely be in Poland. I'm going there to coach a few guys. I will have one, maybe two coaching spots available. It's hard to say yet, and I'm actually excited to go to Poland because Poland is a very interesting place when you're talking about teaching Daygame, not just Daygaming, because there are places that are just too easy for Daygame, like Prague. And if you learn in a place like Prague, then you go back to your home city, and even if you were doing decent in Prague, you will very often go back and think, wait, why isn't this stuff working back in my city? Because Prague was a little bit too easy, and now you thought you know stuff, but then you went back to your city and turns out it's a little bit harder. And there are places like New York City or Belgrade which are much harder for learning Daygame, and you might not learn enough just because of how many blowouts you get, how short the interactions are for that. The entry barrier in places like New York City and Belgrade is pretty high, so they're harder for teaching. And for that reason, again, not perfect for learning Daygame, unless of course you're living there and that's your only option where you can Daygame. But Poland is in the middle. It's harder than Prague. It's easier than Belgrade, it's easier than many of the bigger, harder cities, and of course it's full with beautiful Polish girls. It's also full with Ukrainians and tourists from many countries around the world. So I think Poland is a very interesting place, especially for coaching Daygame, not just for going on Daygame trips. So I'll have one or two coaching spots there. If you are interested to find out more, there's a link in the description. Go to the page, read everything about how coaching usually happens, fill the form at the bottom of the page, and I will get back to you with all the information, the dates, the prices, the cities we're going to, etc. And now let's talk about Daygame in Istanbul, Turkey. So guys, today we have something special. We have two guests, not just one guest. We have Robbie Kramer, who has been on my podcast several times before. The first time he was here, he was telling you guys how to become the next Dan Bilzerian, because that's what he teaches. He teaches how to use your social circle and many other platforms or sources to build amazing rotation of girls and everything that comes with it. And we have Nick. Nick, can you give a little intro about you? I know you are working with Robbie as a coach, but can you tell a bit more about yourself?
Yeah, I was an electrical engineer with a normal 9-to-5 job for a while in Florida. I was in a relationship for 5 years or more, and it was not that great. We separated, and then I was kind of like, fuck, what do I do here? There were no options where I was living, kind of in a small town. So thankfully I found Robbie. He was teaching kind of how to expand your dating options and improve your lifestyle. And so, not just only learning about dating, but also the ability to be kind of a digital nomad and move around and stuff. And I went on kind of an extended coaching, they call it like an immersion, where you just go visit in one area and spend a few days just getting immersed in this whole lifestyle. And we did that in Kiev, and I kind of fell in love with that lifestyle and that city in general. So I kept learning the material, and then at some point Robbie was like, hey, we should team up, you should be a coach. So I was like, okay, sounds great. So started doing that with him about a year ago. And it's been great since then. We had both been living in Kiev for a little bit, and then we got pushed out because of the recent war. And we went to Turkey for a few months and had some fun there. And then now I'm in Belgrade.
Well, Nick, first thing I want to tell you is welcome to the industry. I think you've learned that it's more interesting than guys would even think, but it's also much harder than guys would think.
Yeah.
Like teaching this shit is like on the next level compared to how people imagine it is, and it's sometimes so tiring, but I love it, and I believe Robbie loves it, and so welcome to the industry, dude. That's the first thing I want to tell you. I'm glad we have new players. So let's have a little bit of a background thing about Turkey. What were you guys doing there? How long did you stay there? How many students did you coach there? How many, if it was Daygame, how many sets more or less did the students do in total, or you guys? Or kind of what's the background info? What are we dealing here with? What's the data set, so to say?
Sure.
Approximately, of course.
So the reason why we chose Turkey was not for a dating reason at all. I'm engaged, and I'm kind of out of the game and in a monogamous relationship after being the biggest man whore, I knew for a long time. But I wanted to go to Turkey specifically to avoid the Ukrainian winter. So we had plans to go there anyways. The war just kind of sped up that decision. So we left in January, and we spent the first month actually down in Antalya. And that's an interesting place because it's not Istanbul, of course, and it's even more like sort of religious and full of sort of Russian and Ukrainian tourists. I don't really think we need to talk much about Antalya. I mean, you can go there, you can apply all the same principles. I just think it's way less metropolitan than Istanbul, so you're going to run into way less westernized girls who I think we found were a little bit more receptive to Daygame. But we mainly chose Turkey due to the weather, due to the cheap cost of living, and the fact that it was just like a great golf destination, which I'm sure people listening to this don't give a fuck about. So when Nick joined up with me, we moved to Istanbul. We were staying in a place called Sisli, which is like right next to Nisantasi, which is kind of like the Soho. If you're comparing it to New York, it's like the Soho of Istanbul. And there's a lot of cool neighborhoods within Istanbul. And because we were there for a month, and neither of us, I had one prior experience in Turkey. I actually I used to do kind of like a Euro tour where I'd bring clients from the US and Western Europe, and we'd do a tour of Eastern Europe. We'd usually stop in Budapest, stop in Belgrade, stop in Odessa or Kiev. And one time, just due to logistics of flights, we did Istanbul. And we did it for 3 days. It was during the middle of the week, and there was a big night game component to that specific trip. We went out to some of the clubs. We had one black guy with us who experienced a ton of racism, had a hard time getting him into the clubs. This was back in 2015. So, a few years ago, of course, but no one liked Turkey. Everyone was like, this place sucks. It's horrible for game. Fuck this place. However, coming back in 2022, I had a much more positive experience, especially because we did more Daygame. We stayed in a different part of town. I think the city's changed within those 7 years, and so basically what we did is Nick was there. Nick was single. I was there to help facilitate whatever problems he ran into, and we just kind of used it as a testing ground. After we found that there was a ton of opportunities, there were a ton of girls, like the foot traffic is just as good as New York City almost. Just a ton of girls walking around if you're in the right neighborhoods, and decent quality looking girls too. Like I was impressed with the sheer volume. And then because it was, halfway decent enough, we invited one of our clients to come and do like almost a 10-day intensive sort of training where we were day gaming with him every day, going on double dates with him, even doing mock dates with him, and following him on undercover dates. So he would get a date, we'd set up a hidden camera and audio and follow him around and see how he did. So I'll kind of hand it over to Nick from here to talk about some of the specific Daygame experiences, unless you had any other questions about the setup, Robert.
The big thing is, so the student you coached for Daygame, how many students have you coached there, both of you?
I believe it was just the one, right, Nick?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you have a rough kind of idea how many sets he did in total, day game? How many girls he opened?
I want to say probably 20 to 30. Does it sound right, Robbie? He went out with you separate from when he went out with me.
He did probably closer to 50. And how many did you do, Nick?
Okay.
50. That's over 10 days?
Yeah. Because we were out, I was pushing him to
that's
do
not a lot.
10 or 20.
He did 10 or 20 when he was with me.
And had some anxiety.
Pretty big. Okay, 50 is not a big sample size. Okay, that's kind of tricky. Wait, so 50 over 10 days. What was he doing the rest of the time? was he night gaming as well, or?
He was night gaming.
Yeah, we did get him a.
Okay, yeah.
So we did get him a couple dates actually. He was struggling to get, I think, dates from the girls that he wanted, and he was fairly picky as well. There'd be many times where I'd be like, her. No, she's not, whatever thing, and telling us about how it's like, he felt like less than 1% of the girls anywhere would be approachable or whatever, so it's hard to get past that. Did he get dates from Daygame, Robbie? Or I think we set him up with 2 dates from girls that I Daygamed to go on mock dates with him.
I think he got 0 dates from Daygame there. He might have gotten 1 instant date, but his Daygame skills were very bad. So we're relying more on Nick's data because Nick is actually
proficient. Okay, but Nick, you were gaming there as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh, how many sets did you do there, more or less?
Probably 150.
Okay, now we're talking. Now we have like a decent sample size. We have 200 sets of a sample size, 150 from a guy who knows how to day game, and 50 from a guy who is just starting out, just learning, and doesn't have too much game. Okay, now, okay, now we can actually like talk about the city. Great. Okay, so 150 sets. Just to get an understanding of the girls in Istanbul, because I've heard the locals aren't as easy, but tourists are. What was your impression about girls there? So who was more approachable, locals or foreigners?
Well, definitely foreigners would be more approachable. I'm not sure I ran into a whole lot of foreigners myself because the area we were in was kind of the center of the city. And a lot of the time I went out approaching was during the highest foot traffic time. So people were coming and going to work. I did meet some people that were foreigners, but, they're all like, hey, I'm leaving really soon, or they didn't express much interest. I found the hardest thing was the language barrier, just trying to get people comfortable with talking to somebody who doesn't speak any of their language. Because when I'm in Ukraine when I was in Ukraine and I can, like, say a few words in Russian, like, they'll usually start with, oh, no, I don't talk any of this English at all. And you just have to kind of say a few words that they understand, have the basic, I am, who are you, nice to meet you. And then they actually do speak English and they become a lot more comfortable with engaging with you because you're kind of trying to meet them halfway. So I know I've had so many of those situations happen in Kiev, so I'm certain a lot of the situations that didn't go well in Istanbul could have been a lot better if I had basic Turkish skills.
Okay, what about you said there were many tourists. The feeling, what feeling did you get from the tourists? Are they the kind of tourists that went there for one day and then went to another place, or were they there for a few days, a week, or something like that? So basically, were they the tourists that you're not even going to get a same day lay with them, or was there actually a chance to go on dates with those tourists in Turkey?
I didn't meet a lot of tourists that, if I did meet them, it didn't go anywhere. Like, I didn't have dates with tourists. Okay. So either I wasn't in an area where there were a lot of tourists, or they just weren't interested in me for whatever reason.
Dan had a date with a few tourists, which we met night gaming, and he had actually, I think, 2 or 3 dates with tourists, and they were all there for usually 3 to 5 days, a week max. So we found that it was a pretty high turnover, at least for his small sample size. I'm not sure if that's indicative of the whole thing.
3 days is already doable because, you know, they're there, like at least they're staying there some evenings, so you still can get them out on dates. The guy who had the dates, was it a student or who?
The student, yeah.
Okay, so he did get a few dates with the tourists. And the locals, so the student didn't do that great when day gaming, but when he was night gaming and meeting girls from other sources, was he having dates with locals as well, or only with tourists?
I think the 3 dates he got were all with tourists, but they were all with tourists, like Dubai girls who were living in Dubai, not from Dubai. These were like, you know, either Russians or Ukrainians who lived in Dubai who were coming to Turkey and then going back to Dubai.
So Dubai is a tricky topic because Dubai is known for a lot of professionals. Tomorrow morning, I'm recording a podcast with a day gamer from Dubai. And day game is, by the way, illegal in Dubai. That's very interesting.
What?
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Never been. But I do know it's full of pros.
Yes, it's full of pros, but yeah, day game is illegal, and harassment is illegal, and it's considered harassment, and the fine is actually pretty high. But I have a student who lives there, and he's day gaming there all the time, and I'm doing okay. So, you know.
I'd love to listen to that episode. That sounds fascinating.
I'll send you the link, dude. We actually recorded it because of glitch in this software, a mistake on my part. We had that echo in that episode, and we have to re-record it, and it was terrible. But we're redoing it tomorrow. I'll send you the link. Okay. Those tourists, you were listening in on the dates, right? Or one of you was listening in on the dates?
Mm-hmm. I was listening to one, and I was there in person for one on a double date. I brought my fiance, she brought a friend, and there was 5 of us that went to dinner. And this girl was very, very hot. I think she was actually Lebanese, was living in Dubai and visiting Istanbul with her close friend. We met them at a high-end lounge and ended up going out with them again. The particular sticking point of this client is he actually spends way too much time on the site, like seeking arrangements, and he tends to attract the gold diggers. And we're trying to get him to stop doing that, but he's almost addicted to it. So, that date didn't really go anywhere, but she genuinely seemed to like him, and I think there's a pretty good chance that if he is back in Dubai where he has a residence, they'll meet up again. So, like I said, he's a bit inexperienced when it comes to seduction.
We do have a limited sample size, but did those girls give off the professional vibes, or were they there actually to have fun, and the date went like okay, and you didn't have any of those problems? The problems we discussed in the podcast, we just recorded for your podcast.
Right. No, these were genuine girls that were looking to have a good time. Definitely not, they even offered to pay for the meal, and they were cool. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. You said you met the girl at a fancy lounge. What were the best places in your view? This is a question to both of you. What do you see as the best places for meeting girls in Istanbul? Is it clubs? Is it streets? Is it, I don't know.
I probably went out to night game venues 3 or 4 times. Nick and I went to that one specific place. I think it was at what hotel was that? The W Hotel. It was a very cool sort of like, maybe it wasn't. I forget the name, but I can find it. It was kind of like a Tulum vibe, very sort of tribal, great DJ. There is a cool nightlife scene in Istanbul, and there's lots of hot girls when you go out. And for the most part, it was like young, hot. It was kind of like New York Tulum vibes, which I was impressed by. So but you got to be very advanced to do well in those environments. It's a much tougher skill than day game, in my opinion. But that is there. Like, that is a good option for a guy who has those skills. And that's what I kind of liked about Istanbul. It had that well-roundedness to it.
Okay, what about day game? Were there any areas that you found that could have good day game potential? Or
Nisantasi was decent. Sisli was decent. Those are both kind of in a very similar area, kind of like right smack dab in the city. If you go to like the tourist trap, which is like Taksim Square, that didn't seem very good for day game. There was way too many tourists and too many sites there. There's another area called, let me look on the map. I'm blanking on the name. It's kind of over by the river.
If you look at the browser that we have open, on the right side there's the chat kind of thingy. Can you write the names of those neighborhoods there once, like when you are telling them, just so that I can actually search for them on. So Sisli.
Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Nisantasi.
There's like this, some of the S's are pronounced CH. So Nisantasi and Sisli.
Whatever.
Yeah.
As long as I can find
the
them
main
on Google
road.
Maps and
So and then there's the area that's kind of like the most high-end area called Bebek. I'll write that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's over by the river, and you can essentially there's a like a jogging path that starts north of Bebek, kind of up by the bridge, by the Sultan Bridge, Fatih Sultan Bridge, that goes all the way down along the river. And I went out with some clients back in 2015, and we day gamed on that walkway. And you can go basically all the way down to that next bridge, which is called, I believe, the Hitler, the Hitler Bridge, Hitler Capruso Bridge. So, and that area is very affluent. But essentially between Bebek and Arnavutkoy, I'll put that one in the chat too.
yes.
Arnavutkoy.
Okay, so those were the places where if anyone goes to Turkey, they might day game. Okay, the next thing I want to know is I've heard from guys that where did Nick go?
Uh-oh.
Nick will reappear.
Yeah, he'll reappear.
He will reappear. Okay, so I've heard from guys that it's a very big city.
Huge. Population.
Yeah,
insane. It's like bigger than New York City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. So you probably have to know the neighborhoods to go to stay at if you want to have any chance at day gaming. So if someone went there for day game, what would be the best neighborhood to stay at?
I think either Nisantasi or Sisli. As far as people traffic, Bebek, if you're going to do night game and you're going to party and you want like the more like high-end Tulum sort of vibe, I wouldn't even recommend Istanbul for that. I would actually recommend a different place closer to Bodrum. But for day game, Nisantasi is going to be the spot.
Okay. So how is the city in general? Because I've heard very mixed opinions. So how is it for hanging out? The bars, the restaurants, nice parks, cost of living, and Nick is back.
Hey guys, bad internet.
Sorry?
Bad internet.
Yeah. So
Hopefully
what we moved to the question of how is Istanbul as a city just for hanging out? So bars to check out, restaurants, nice parks, cost of let's stick with. Does it have nice bars, restaurants, kind of parks, just places to see and kind of like a nice city to be in?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. I really like the. Let me see if I can find it here. The Beşiktaş. Let me write that down here.
Oh yeah, Beşiktaş. It's right next to Nisantasi as well.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, we would.
Or?
Neighborhood.
Yeah, but it's a pretty cool vibe. Lots of cool bars. Pretty good area to meet younger people that are just going out to bars and everything.
Okay.
Good outside dining. Yeah, and there's hookah lounges around if you want that. It's good bars that we were able to find. Good coffee and cheap prices too. I mean, got so cheap there. I think I put on a little bit of weight just because, could easily eat my fill on $5-7. So
yeah, that was.
If you're a foodie, if you're a foodie, it's gonna be a definite place to go. The food is amazing. They give you a lot of it, and it's extremely affordable because the Turkish lira has gotten destroyed, in recent months. So the cost of living is pretty much unbeatable. It was cheaper than Ukraine, before the war.
What?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
incredibly cheap.
ridiculous.
So and I was with my two big dogs, so I did a lot of parking, as you could say, or going to different parks, not parking cars. And I found the parks to be quite nice. It's a very livable city. And there's a lot, it has a lot to offer. It's cool to walk around. It's relatively easy to walk around. Getting taxis is really not easy. That's one of the huge things. Like if you're trying to meet up with people in different parts of the city, dealing with traffic and taxis is a nightmare. Like they just don't come when you order an Uber. If you're going to the airport, they'll come because they know it's a big ride. But otherwise, forget it. Luckily, I had my car there, which I'm sure no one listening who goes to Istanbul is going to take their car. I wouldn't. I mean, if you can take a car there, I would kind of recommend that because otherwise, it's very hard to get taxis. But it's also not super convenient to have a car because parking's difficult. But as a whole, definitely a very livable, cool, affordable city with Daygame options. So I was a fan.
So what I'm trying to
And
understand...
with the taxi thing, just real quick, with the taxi thing though, if you're willing to pay more, or just I think I had trouble getting taxis around because I was going through Uber because I trust that app. But if you're willing to pay twice what Uber is suggesting you pay, then you can get rides to places, especially if you know how to hail them in the middle of the street and everything. But as a foreigner, you don't speak the language and you don't know what the right prices are for taxis and whatnot, then that can be a little annoying because it's hard to use Uber. They do have scooters that you can get around with. I never did that, but they have tons of scooters everywhere if you're into that.
Can you look up the price on Uber and then just quote double the price to the taxi driver?
I never tried that, but yeah, potentially. I mean, basically what happened is a couple nights when I was trying to go back with an Uber, they'd accept, but then they'd start a little discussion. They basically bumped the price up twice what it was. So,
yeah, okay.
It's not really a big deal. It probably comes out to New York prices for moving around with your taxi. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Still, everything's super cheap there.
Okay, so the thing that I'm in the middle of being curious about Istanbul and being it sounds like it's a nice city, but it sounds like it's shit for Daygame. So, am I right or I can't really understand. Is it Daygame? Do you guys think it's a decent Daygame city? I'm not trying to compare it to places like Kiev or Belgrade or even Warsaw or Prague, New York. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to understand if someone is in Istanbul and is in that Sisli, in those neighborhoods and then goes out for 2 hours, will he easily open, let's say, 15 girls in 2 hours?
Yeah, he could definitely find 15 girls in 2 hours. That's what I really liked about Istanbul. Is there was just a lot of volume, especially in the area that we were staying at. You could easily go out and approach that many. But the issue is then, how receptive are they? For a lot of them, they find it very odd that this behavior of just approaching somebody in the middle of the daytime. I also experienced a couple times where, because I don't speak any Turkish, girl might not understand what I'm there trying to do, so I have to, try to use sign language to try to calm her down, be like, look, I'm interested in it's not like I'm trying to attack you or anything, right? And as I'm doing this, I can see guys walking around behind her that are giving me bad looks and are like, why is this guy harassing this woman, right? And because I can't diffuse the situation quickly by speaking the language, that can be a little maybe intimidating, if you have hostile men hanging around you while you're trying to do this. But yeah, so there's some chance of misunderstanding like that, and it's hard to get through the language barrier sometimes, and through the cultural barrier of just the fact that it's kind of odd. But you do find people that are more open to it, more likely to find foreigners that are open to it. That's usually what I found. And, if they're foreigners, they're more likely to speak English.
Yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to ask. If I'm hanging around those Sisli and Nisantasi or whatever it's pronounced, neighborhoods, will I be able to do 15 sets in 2 hours with foreigners?
Maybe. You can pretty easily spot models. There's a lot of models walking around Istanbul, and those are obviously going to be foreigners, and they're going to be hot, and they're probably going to speak English better than the locals, so you can approach them.
That was what I found to be the most interesting, and the only other place besides New York City where it's so obvious. Because there's certain neighborhoods in New York City, if you go to Union Square where there's like the restaurant called the Coffee Shop, that place like only hires models, and it's pretty easy to tell if a girl's a model because she's just usually so tall, and especially if she's coming from castings because she's dressed in a model-esque sort of way. And the average, Turkish girls are short, but the models in Turkey are extremely tall. So you can spot one of these models walking around so easily, and they're just prime for Daygame because they're going to speak English. They're probably there for 2 to 3 months, and it's like the best possible scenario. So they're hot because they're models. You have to have good game to be able to attract a model, of course. But it's a city where they're going to stand out, and it's going to be painfully obvious. And a lot of the time, these girls that are there, because my fiance, spent a lot of time living in Turkey before we met on modeling contracts there, and these girls are like dying to go out and go on dates and meet guys, and it's a perfect situation.
So, can I find 15 of those in 2 hours? Not models, just foreigners, people who speak English, not Turkish, but in 2 hours. Is that possible or not? What's kind of like the conclusion here?
I would say yes.
Nick?
I would say it depends on the time of the day. And around where I was, in the evening when people are heading home from work is the time to find all the people, the maximum amount of people. And then you could easily, I think, get your 15. You could also go to south where all the tourists are, near the river. And I remember when we were walking around, Robbie, and we were taking pictures of you and Maria, there were just so many freaking people walking around there. So you could easily find, and that's where I went on the Insta date with that one girl as well. When we were walking home, remember?
What neighborhood was that?
Which neighborhood is that?
The neighborhood. Remember that?
It was next to the Dolmabahce Palace.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so there was that. It looks like
I'm having trouble finding it again. Oh, I see it here.
It's kind of where Nisantasi. Like if you just walk down from
it's just
Sisli,
south of Nisantasi, yeah.
Yeah, just walk down through Nisantasi and down to like it's called the Dolmabahce Palace, and then that whole waterfront there, Ayaspasa neighborhood.
I'm sure we're pronouncing all of these perfectly.
That in the chat or something.
Yeah,
there's no way I'm going to be able to write that.
Ayaspasa.
Okay. Oh, fuck. Where did my browser go? Okay, I gotta copy paste that. I'm gonna save that. And that's where I'm gonna find a lot of tourists, right?
Yes. Anywhere
I
close
think that's
to the
where you're gonna find
Bosphorus.
the maximum amount of tourists.
Bosphorus, or you can go to Taksim Square, like I mentioned. Tons of tourists there. Lots of bars there as well.
Because taxis were hard to get around, I just mainly stuck to where I could walk to quickly. So that was why I was so much around the Sisli area. But yeah, if you wanted tourists, I didn't really care about finding tourists or anything. If you wanted tourists, that area where we were right on the coast, that Dolmabahce Palace, looked like it would be excellent.
That is Ayaspasa, yeah?
Yeah, around that area.
Okay. So if I go there, I'll easily do 10 sets, 15 sets in 2 hours. No problem.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. With tourists.
I would say so. And I think everyone that was there looked like a tourist to me.
Okay, great. That sounds more interesting. So how do you guys think, so we kind of come to a conclusion, okay, it's a day gameable city, it's pretty decent for day game, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys think...
Yeah, I mean, if you're not comparing it to Kiev or something like that.
No, I'm not. Because, maybe students are fine with something a bit more interesting, a bit more adventurous, but I just want to make sure it's a decent city for day game, so I don't take students to... Like, I took students to Kharkiv last summer, and like the English level was like, I was doing great. For me, it was pussy paradise because I speak Russian. but for students, it was a different experience. But still, half of them got laid there, so you know. Okay, so how do you guys think those if I choose the right neighborhoods and I go there with students, do you think, or anyone else, I'm just not me, do you think those places, do you think Istanbul is a decent city for day game coaching? And what I mean by decent city is it's not too easy, like Prague, too easy. It's not too hard, like New York or London. It's knowing that 90% of day game is the same regardless where in the world you are. So do you think it's not too easy, not too hard, and it's more or less 90% the same day game stuff that works somewhere else will work there? What are your thoughts on this, guys?
Nick, you can go
I mean,
first.
for me, I haven't been. So I was in. My history is like, you know, while I was in Florida, I was day gaming in my pretty small area. I didn't really travel that much outside of that in America, and I think I have some experience limited in Peru, some experience in Kiev, and now Berlin, but I haven't been to like Prague and done this kind of stuff, or, you know, I've not been doing this for as long as Robbie, so I haven't been, or yourself, so I haven't been all over the world doing this, so I can't compare those other cities.
What about if you compare Istanbul, those neighborhoods, to the places you have been so far, where you have experience?
Yeah, so I felt like day gaming, definitely possible there, aside from the language barrier, so you'll struggle with that. But yeah, you can absolutely find girls to go out on dates with, instant dates. Some of them are very open. A lot of the younger girls, even the local ones, you know, they're very westernized as well. So in some sense, that's good in that they're more likely to know English, more likely to be open to talking to a stranger, and trying to escape from their conservative families. But in another sense, I ran into an issue when you get them out on dates, then they want to like talk about, the vibe is very different. And I was used to talking to more traditional Eastern girls at that point because I just come from Kiev. So they're wanting to talk about politics. I had one girl that just like was dying to talk about politics, and I kept being like, yeah, I don't know, it's not so great to talk about politics on a first date. You know, they tell you to avoid this. And she's like, why? Why would we avoid it? I'm like, the date's going to suck. And she's going to be, well, I want to talk about politics. So, you know, you struggle with that a little bit more. I didn't have nearly that kind of vibe as much even in Berlin, which is also very westernized. So, I don't know, maybe I just got unlucky, but, yeah.
Okay. Robbie, what's your take?
I guess I would say, you know, from my experience there, it wouldn't be my first choice or even in the top 5 or 10 places to take students or coach students to. It's doable, and it's better suited for a guy who wants a mixture of night game and day game. For that reason, it could be a good place to coach someone who wanted both. But, you know, to succeed there, you're going to have to be decently advanced. I think it's slightly too difficult and too many barriers. And as Nick was saying, there is, like, Turkish guys are known to be aggressive and confrontational. So you're going to run into that. And if you're like a new day gamer and that experience is going to like scare you out of doing approaches, that's not good. So that would be my biggest, you know, red cautionary flag is that's going to happen. And you got to be okay with that. And if that's going to scare you from day gaming, that's not good.
Okay, so
yeah, and even when I was in Berlin, I accidentally ran into a Turkish girl while I was in the mall, and I just started trying to talk to her, right? And she was very like not giving me a lot of love or anything. So at some point, I just like I think I got the vibe. She said something about her husband, and so I looked over and I see this guy glaring at me, and I walk up to try to like establish peace. I'm like, hey, it's no big deal. Like, this is your wife. I'm backing off, you know. But he was just so pissed off by that point. He ended up shoving me, and like he had his kid there, right? Like. This guy's got his baby stroller there, and he's trying to start a fight with me. This is how, like, aggressive and possessive they can get. He was like, you just go and talk to people's women? And I was like, yeah. He was, like, they don't, it's not their mentality. They don't understand that. They'll get really pissed off sometimes. So.
Okay, so
on one hand, on one hand, that's because Turkish guys are just known to be so bad. Like, they have the reputation kind of around the world as being some of the worst seducers or just the worst game of all time. And Turkey's overrun with men. That's the other problem, is if you do go out to some of these venues, it's usually a bad ratio, but the Turkish guys are just no competition. They're so bad, and a lot of Turkish girls don't like Turkish guys because they're so possessive. So, you're going to do a lot better than the locals in a lot of sense, but you are going to have to deal with the hostility. So, good and bad.
And just to be fair, when you're not trying to hit on their women, Turkish guys very nice.
Super
felt
nice.
like I was able to make bros with them really quickly and everything. Yeah.
Not to bag on Turkish guys too much. Yeah, they just need coaching.
No,
yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but maybe because it's a Muslim country.
I think that's really it.
That's the trouble. Is yes, you, at the end of the day, you are. It's definitely of all the Muslim countries the most westernized and the most Western friendly, but it is a Muslim country, and Daygame there is going to be more of an uphill battle than a non-Muslim country.
Okay, so my goal for doing this podcast with you guys was I wanted to understand is Turkey worth exploring, and I have 2 students signed up for September who are down with adventurous, interesting locations and everything, and I wanted to understand, should I take them to Istanbul because I've heard some good things, or should I not? And my conclusion is I am very curious to go to Istanbul myself, maybe with some friends, but I understand it's not a good idea to go there with a student because I almost never coach guys more than once.
Okay.
No, it depends on their level.
Starting guys, but I don't want to take them to a 50-50 country. I want to take them to a nice place because I very rarely I have cases where I have to coach someone more than once. And one of these guys is a guy who I'm coaching for the second time. Because last summer, there were several reasons. We went to Kharkiv with him, where I actually did pretty okay in Kharkiv, and we didn't have any kind of issues there, even with the language and everything. And then he kind of was busy with different things, with business and everything, so he kind of put Daygame on a back burner. And now he's like, okay, now I have a different mental attitude. I'm in the right headspace. I want to do it now, and I really want to take him to a great place to not have that kind of problems with language barrier and everything else. So I understood from you guys that Istanbul is a very interesting place to visit. I'm very, very curious to go there, but I realize it's not the best place to take students to. Anything else you guys want to add about Istanbul?
Anything specific about your dates, Nick? I know you had the one sort of mini relationship or girlfriend experience with the girl that we met. That was pretty fascinating because you met her while we were just kind of out walking around, right? And then you went on an all-day instant date with her. You missed the opportunity for the same day lay. For
the same day lay.
So tell that story briefly because I think that sets a good example.
So I mean, this was early on in our time there. So I was out with Robbie, walking the dogs, and passed this girl. It's always good to try to make eye contact with anybody passing by so you can see if you're getting love right away. And she did. She was giving me the most eye contact out of anyone. So
I noticed the fuck me eyes. I saw her looking at Nick, and as soon as she passed, Nick looked at me, and I looked at Nick, and we both nodded, and he ran back with her.
So it's kind of
they had a quick interaction on the sidewalk, and then maybe a minute later, he's like, "Here, take the dog."
And then we went off. We went to go get a coffee, but it was so easy because we were both into each other, so much at the beginning, right? And so when that happens, the rest of it just kind of flows naturally. You just have to not fuck it up. She actually did a lot of the leading because I was newer there and I didn't know my way around town really. So she actually walked us over. That's how I found Nisantasi and saw it was a cool place. So we walked there after we did the coffee thing. We just got some beers and sat on the stairs and chatted, and we made out there. It was actually pretty natural, and it was pretty cool. I've never been on a date that successfully that I wasn't leading. So that's why I'm saying there's a lot of Western girls there. We were even talking, somehow we got into some minor politics that we navigated out of quickly enough, but it wasn't it didn't ruin it, it was still fun because we both just were liking each other's vibe a lot. So Yeah, it worked out. I missed the opportunity to, take her back on the first day, but, 1 or 2 dates later, we
Didn't
did
she
that.
suggest going back to you, or how did you blow that?
She suggested, oh, yeah, so we're walking back. Well, I don't know. It's been a while, so I kind of forget exactly what happened. But yeah, she definitely dropped me off back at my place, and I didn't take the opportunity to say, you should come up, which, stupid me.
Which was nowhere near her
They
place.
also...
She walked you back.
She had I know. She had to take a train ride out to be in this area, and then when we would go on dates later, same thing, So I didn't miss any opportunities later on because I was like, everything, all systems go. I was aware of what was going on and kicking myself for the last time. But yeah, it's a great experience. We had a good time. Yeah, I just say, like, you can meet, there's a lot of traditional culture around you, but you'll meet those more liberated women sometimes, and it can be a lot of fun. They don't also expect you to be so much of the leader throughout the whole thing. And I think I messed up sometimes where I tried to do that too much, or I tried to pay too much. I've learned since then, if they insist that they pay, don't fight them too hard on it. Well, when I was in Kiev dating a lot, it was kind of like, it's expected. They're not going to be upset if you insist on paying,
Okay, sounds
some of those girls
interesting.
were actually upset. I think you would enjoy it, Robert. You should definitely go and check it out.
I think
students,
so too. I'm just gonna
Only
go without
advanced.
students because I'm very careful with taking students to places that are actually good for day game. That's why I don't like Prague, because I think it's too easy, and there are places that are too hard. So I'm trying to find those places that are in the middle, that are just like a little bit hard, but not too much. So they go back to their cities, and it's not like, oh, I did so good in Prague, and they go back to their city, and you're like, oh shit, day game doesn't work here. Well, what am I doing wrong? What's happening? So I'm super careful about that. That's why I wanted to really understand. But I will check it out for myself. I've actually been there maybe 15 years back or so, but that was way too long ago.
Yeah.
So, guys, let me ask you an important question. If people liked your knowledge about Turkey, and they liked your vibe in general, how you talk about not just day game but also night game, and you're doing very many different things. You're even teaching people about how to use seeking to find girls that are not just trying to milk you for money, how to navigate that environment. So where can guys find out more about you guys? And should they go to one place to find out about both of you, or are there separate links, or what's the...
Yeah, good. We're both at the same place. It's innerconfidence.com, and specifically the Leverage program. So if you just go on the site and you either have a look at the Leverage podcast, which is very similar to this, and obviously you've been on my podcast, you want to get a better feel for some of our content, I'd suggest listening to some of the episodes. And if you want more instruction and like an ongoing mentorship, then check out the Leverage program, where we take guys through all of these different facets of kind of becoming a complete man. And whether that's if you're interested in living the Dan Blazarian lifestyle and building out a crazy social circle, we cover that. Or anything that's involving day game, online game, seeking, for example, where we get a lot of guys who are in their 40s and 50s recently who have been more interested in like sort of the dating, dabbling in the sugar baby space. That's why we've had a lot of discussion about seeking recently, but definitely not something I would recommend for a beginner.
Well, guys, thank you very much for doing this, and I'll say until the next time. Well, as you can see now, I was actually thinking about spending September in Turkey, but after recording this podcast with Robbie and Nick, I realized it isn't a great place for taking students there. So if you want to learn day game in a much better place in Poland this September, then click the link in description, fill the form there, and I'll send you all the information. And if everything sounds good, we will hop on a short WhatsApp call. I'll get to know you a little bit more. You probably have some questions you want to ask me before jumping on the decision. Guys, thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next podcast episode. Ciao.